Ladies and gentlemen, friends and members of the SwissCham Asia, friends of Singularity, it is the pleasure, or it is my pleasure, to open today's webinar, which seems to be showing the way from green to sustainability. And I think as we are doing that, we will have to try to differentiate what it is when we are just doing greenwashing and what it is when we try to change the world to the better and when we are achieving actually this goal. In the past few years, sustainability or efforts to help the climate have been all the rage. Every company has been reporting on their annual reports about what wonderful deeds they have done. But some of these deeds, by closer inspection, are nothing more than just marketing stunts. And in today's episode of our lines of webinars, we want to address this to a certain extent. We have a very distinguished set of speakers today, and with these speakers, we touch the topic for maybe 10 minutes each, and afterwards, 3 additional speakers will join a panel. The audience is most welcome to submit questions in the chat function of our webinar. We will try to address them as we go along. Please indicate to whom you would want to address these questions of the panel, and I will then try to ask the questions. Little introduction of myself. Urs Lustenberger, Chair of SwissCham Asia and Chair of Singularity Academy. So I wear both of these hats in today's event. I'm usually, when I'm not being in the function of one of these 2 chairs, I'm a lawyer in Zurich. And with this, I want to delve into our today's topic, and no one is better to start our today's topic than Ambassador Tenzin Wangchuk from Bhutan, the land of the thunder dragon, the land that has developed the Gross National Happiness Index, probably the only country that can claim to be carbon positive, the only country that has a vision of building a mindful city, and the only country in Asia that is known to me. No, this is wrong. I switched this sentence, and I hand over the word to Ambassador Wangchuk. The floor is yours. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Urus, for that very, very generous introduction. Perhaps this was more than I expected. Anyway, good afternoon, everyone. At the outset, I must confess that I feel most honored and privileged to be given an opportunity to be part of this apparently monthly webinar organized by SwissCham and Singularity Academy. I must confess also that I had been looking for an occasion to engage with the distinguished members of SwissCham for some time. So this webinar is a welcome opportunity. So my heartfelt gratitude to President Urus and Dr. Zhang for giving me this digital space. I have been asked to talk on the subject of sustainability, which I gladly obliged, as the subject of sustainability is very close to the development philosophy of my country, the Kingdom of Bhutan. I'm not sure how many of you have been to Bhutan or how many of you know about Bhutan. So perhaps my talk will also be a brief introduction to my country, Bhutan. Now, before I begin, out of curiosity, I looked up on the internet to find out Switzerland's carbon footprint. I don't know if you're aware of the data. I was rather surprised to find out that Switzerland is a small country with a giant carbon footprint, in that Switzerland is responsible for 2 to 3% of the global emission. I was quite surprised actually. However, I'm very encouraged to learn that Switzerland, aims to become carbon neutral by 2050 under their new climate and innovation law. Now, in the global discourse on climate change and sustainability, many nations face the dilemma of the opportunity cost of climate change versus economic growth. The question arising is why should one country reduce emission, potentially impeding its own economic growth, if other countries continue to emit carbon and inflict climate-related damages globally? Now, this is precisely the question that creates the free rider problem, endemic in climate change policy, and renders the promises made at international conferences like the COP15, like the Paris Agreement, often ineffective. Now, we in Bhutan, I think we have found a way to overcome the pull of free riding and in some ways emerged as a champion of sustainability. In championing sustainability, we know there are no guarantees that other countries will catch up in time to prevent countries like mine from suffering from the adverse effect of climate change. We have also proved to the world that it is possible to achieve economic growth without compromising environmental integrity and sustainability. Now, going back to the subject of green and sustainable growth, Bhutan has been a pioneer on the subject of sustainable growth long before it appeared on the global agenda. Now, when Bhutan ended its self-imposed isolation and when we opened our doors to the outside world in the early 1960s, a very conscious decision was taken by our leaders to pace our economic growth in ways which did not impact our culture, our tradition, and most importantly, our environment. A decade later, in the 1970s, during the reign of our fourth king, His Majesty Jigme Singye Wangchuk promulgated the development philosophy of gross national happiness as against the idea of a GDP-centric model. Of course, today Bhutan is known for this concept of gross national happiness, which Dr. Urus touched on very briefly during his introduction. Now, the development philosophy of gross national happiness encapsulates the importance of balancing economic growth, preservation of environment, our tradition and culture, amongst others. Now, since then, since the idea was promulgated, the concept of sustainable development has been central to all our development plans and programs. Now, we take our national commitment to sustainability and protection of our environment a step further by giving it a legal framework. Our constitution, which was adopted in 2008, has an entire chapter on environment. And most notably, our constitution requires that a minimum of 60% of our land area must be maintained under forest cover for all time. At the global level, we have also pledged to remain carbon neutral for all times to come. At the moment, Bhutan is a carbon negative country. Now with 70% of our land under forest cover, we absorb annually about 11 million tons of carbon dioxide generated by other countries. Now, what kind of, leadership role is Bhutan playing in the international arena? I want to talk very briefly about the recently concluded COP29 in Baku, Azerbaijan. During the COP29, Bhutan spearheaded the formation and launched an alliance of a group of countries called G0. Now, this is a group of countries who are carbon negative or carbon neutral. Currently, there are only about, I think, 8 countries which are carbon neutral, and even fewer countries which are carbon negative. And as I mentioned, Bhutan is one of the carbon negative countries at the moment. Now, these group of countries will take initiatives to advance global efforts towards a net zero, climate resilient, and a nature positive world. Additionally, this group of countries, they aim to amplify the voices of carbon negative and carbon neutral nations in international climate policy dialogues. It will also work towards maximizing diverse, innovative financing to conserve and enhance carbon sinks, as well as protect our biodiversity and other ecosystems. So I think this is a pivotal movement to drive progress in a journey to repair, the broken relationship with our Mother Earth. Now, the royal government of Bhutan, by prioritizing the well-being of our people, the health of our environment, we have shown that sustainable development is not only achievable, but also essential for a prosperous future. Now, I would like to give you all a context to Bhutan's belief that green and sustainable growth leading to a prosperous future is possible. In 1971, the United Nations created this, category called the least developed countries group, so that these least developed countries could receive focused international financial and technical assistance from international communities, including the UN. So Bhutan was included in this category of LDC, and at that time, Bhutan was among the poorest countries in the world. Bhutan graduated from this category in December last year. Bhutan is no longer a least developed country. So we graduated last year in December. Now, what was something to be noted is Bhutan is among the first group of countries to graduate to a middle income country. And what you may like to note is that Bhutan achieved impressive economic growth on the back of its policy of sustainable development. Given our experience in the last 50 odd years, I sincerely believe that we can achieve economic growth while conserving our environment and pursuing a path of sustainable development. Now we are taking this idea of sustainable development even further, and I'm going to talk very briefly about uh, a new city we are planning, the Gelifu Mindfulness City. Now, we will be building an entirely new city based on the concept of mindfulness and sustainability. This city will become a gateway connecting Bhutan to the world and the future of Bhutanese people. Now, this city project is a very bold initiative, unlike many city projects which have been undertaken in the past or are being constructed in many countries, like the linear city in Saudi Arabia, for example. The Gelifu Mindfulness City strives to prove that a modern city can be built around the ideology of a green and sustainable future. For example, the city will be powered entirely by 100% renewable energy and will ensure that every facet of life and business thrives in harmony with nature. Just for information, the city will welcome international partners, foreign investors, and entrepreneurs who are sensitive to Bhutanese culture and tradition, respect for Bhutanese identity, and understanding of our values, including most perhaps very important, our respect for our Mother Earth. A short video illustration of the city will be shown, and I do hope you will like the video, and it will inspire you all to visit Bhutan and explore investment opportunities in my country. Perhaps I would like to end here, and before I conclude, I would like to once again express my appreciation to everyone for this opportunity to engage with you, and I wish you all a very good afternoon. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ambassador. And I think nobody will ever dare to accuse Bhutan of greenwashing. Bhutan is green.
In the land of the Thunder Dragon lies a special place where wisdom and compassion have forged a unique way of life. Rooted in the timeless principles of Vajrayana Buddhism, Bhutan seamlessly intertwines spiritual and cultural values with a profound respect for nature. A green sanctuary where national parks and forests absorb more CO2 than the country emits. Bhutan harnesses the power of its rivers, making it one of the cleanest nations in the world. Guided by Buddhist principles and the philosophy of gross national happiness, Bhutan has nurtured a society built on trust and well-being. A safe place governed by a stable political system dedicated to the country's long-term vision. Today, Bhutan is focused on building its future, ready to
It's stuck
emerge
again.
as the gateway between South
Oh,
Asia.
now it works.
It's work or not?
Now it works again.
It's so much delay.
Rooted in Bhutanese identity and open to international partners, a new city will serve as a hub for global exchange and sustainable development. With a confined footprint of just 4% of the nation, this special administrative region will lay the foundation for future generations, becoming a new model for a lasting legacy. Welcome to Gilefin Mindfulness City. Descending from the Himalayas to the lush tropical plains, a cascade of urban terraces is shaped by the uninterrupted flow of water, plants, and animals. A land where bridges become cultural landmarks, connecting one neighborhood to another. A human-scale environment designed to inspire and nurture global talent, fostering a culture of collaboration, experimentation, and innovation. In Gilefin, green and clean surroundings will drive businesses towards sustainability, striking a balance between economic success and environmental prosperity. Built with locally sourced river stones, timber, and bamboo, the Mindfulness City blends tradition with modernity, preserving heritage while advancing progress and cultivating resilient, self-sustaining communities. Here, nature is enhanced rather than displaced, with every path drawing you deeper into the wild. This sanctuary for spiritual and physical rejuvenation evolves with its ever-changing landscape, integrating infrastructure with social activities and nature-based solutions. A constellation of public spaces will gather residents of the Mindfulness City to share a life of learning and happiness. In the Vajrayana Buddhist capital of the world, people of all cultures will unite and practice compassion, kindness, and inner peace, revealing Bhutan's greatest teachings. Together, we begin a new era of mindful prosperity.
Sorry for all the technical glitches. I think Professor Zhang will send the link to the movie to all the participants, and you can watch it yourself. Thank you, Ambassador Wangchuk, for your spirited presentation. As I said, Bhutan will never be accused of greenwashing. They are the real thing. I hope the vision of this city will be realized, and I think, and I hope, Switzerland or Europe will be able to play a significant role in the realization of this vision. And with this, I want to go over to our next speaker, Mr. Christoph Häring of Häring and Company AG. He has done the full journey from from wood to cement and back to wood in his life. The company he calls himself what did he say? A carpenter, but he has the highest education of ETH and all the engineering skills that are needed to deal with the task of converting biomass into living structures. I would like, without further ado, to give the word to him. Christoph, the floor is yours.
Thanks a lot, Urs Lustenberger and Jason, for inviting me for this interesting webinar. I like to contribute. I'm honored to be the speaker after the interesting speech of Ambassador, reminding our Swiss population that we waste too much of the material, the goods of this world. Anyhow, my family started much earlier just to work with renewable resource, and this renewable resource just takes sun and water to grow. I have summarized some of my thoughts to share with this presentation. I like to entitle it Light, Fast, Green. And I go quickly talking about myself. That has been done. I'm now in this business for 45 years, and it's still a challenge, and there is a lot to be done. Next picture. This is some pictures of my family, how they started very early as a family, and they stayed together as a family, and we are still a family. That's special, and I'm even a little bit proud of it. Today, we are really active, national and international wise. We are not willing to teach, but we have many people who are interested to find out how it's done, how to, not know how. They need the how to do it. And I can assure you, it is not a rocket science what we're doing, but it is a technology that takes some care. Next picture. I show you the world. I rather concentrate the reuse of the biomass of the northern hemisphere. We should talk about the Amazon. We should talk about the biome. I've worked in the Amazon. I've worked in Central Africa. But I think the biomass on the northern hemisphere, like in Canada, US, or of course Europe or Asia or Soviet areas, there is much more biomass growing that we would use, at least at this moment. Let's go on. I want to talk about ecological and economical facts about wood. MIPS in the first line means mass intensity per service unit. It's a bit hard to explain, but it shows how much is necessary of materia to solve a single problem. If we use wood, we would have a footprint of wood of one part that goes in the job, and one part might be lost. If you compare it to steel, there is 7 times more materia lost on the way to the product until it gets on the job. If you take the footprint of concrete, or if you take it respectively, the CO2 emissions of cement, it is 3 times higher than the international airline industry is putting in the atmosphere. Nobody is aware of this. And of course, our humanity at the moment cannot just substitute concrete, but we can reduce it. But concrete cement is producing 3 times more than if you take the airplane. Nobody is aware of it. What is more important is the strength-weight relation from wood. It is astonishing that the fiber of wood, or the lightness of wood, in comparison to its weight, is completely similar to steel. Nobody's aware of this. That's why I can show you why it's possible to build structures that I'm going to show you. But today, society, I would even say worldwide, has understood that it is an interesting and good challenge to be in the timber age. What we concentrate on is to show to engineers, architects worldwide, that once we start to substitute the primary structure with wood, to substitute steel and concrete, the rest or entire part of the building is on a high level, very sustainable. I've seen the pictures of your mindful city, and nearly all the designs, you can reflect hybrids from bamboo. That will be fine also, of course. But the architecture reflects already that this has been understood. But take a look at this picture. With elements that normally were built in steel or produced in steel, this element is hardly 50 meters long. 50 meters long. It can be transported on our highways in the entire country or even abroad. But it shows that with this technology, glulam technology, we can develop structures that are much bigger than an entire tree. It is so light in relation that sometimes, even it's not very intelligent, we have to transport it by air just to be in time somewhere in another part of the world. It can be formed. It's aesthetical. Architects like this. Architects like this combination, sometimes with glass, steel. It can be formed according to the aesthetical design idea of the architect or the structural functionality. By the way, it was the train station of our main city, Bern. We have decided to develop a Swiss glulam academy. Since many people from abroad come and visit us, they don't want only to see the pictures of projects we do, but they want to learn about the feasibility on how to do it. That's why we have the Swiss Glulam Center for Engineering, Production and Technology Transfer. On the picture on the left side, you see 3 young Bhutan gentlemen learning the technology to do it. That's what we did some 20 years ago in China, in Tianjin, large factory with a Chinese partner. We're still together with him, very strong. And on the right side, you see a small pilot plant. We call it a pilot plant. It's on the height of 3,000 meters above sea level. I think it's the highest glulam plant in the world. It's close to this Royal Academy in Pambisa above Paro. Next picture. You see a picture of the size of the factory in China, and my partner, my son, and my son just tomorrow will go back to our partner to contribute and support their activities engineering-wise. Next picture. This is a nice picture. I think it's 9 years ago. We really developed this small pilot plant up there, and it's the inauguration. It's an inauguration 3 years after I have visited the first time Bhutan. First time I was in 2012 there for a couple of days. In the next year, I brought in not another PowerPoint show, but I came in with a planer engine, with glue, and we produced some samples or mock-up elements. And after that, we built this glulam pilot plant. That was the introduction to the staff of NRTCL and some officials. And this product is a view above the Royal Academy, and this multi-purpose hall. We did not deliver it from Switzerland, but we said it should be produced entirely in your country. And the young gentlemen that you saw in the picture before, that's them who produced it completely. We did the engineering, that's true, but the erection, everything was done locally. We're very proud that this was a very nice goal, and it was not easy to do, but they did it successfully, and it's good to see. Next picture. We did other projects, of course, in the world. Cartier Piaget. Cartier Piaget is well known in Geneva, and 20 years ago, Cartier Piaget decided not to work with the most expensive materials, but simply with wood. And said, Chris, it shouldn't be a simple shag. It should look attractive even after 20 years, which it still does. On the right side, we have one of 9 temples in the temple city Hangzhou. Hangzhou, in this case, we even brought the raw material wood. Just the raw material wood came from Switzerland, and we produced all the structures in Tianjin, and then we transported it to Hangzhou, erected there. At the moment, we are doing very important projects in Amsterdam. It's the ABN AMRO Bank. It's the biggest bank, and even a bank is willing to show their understanding of working with renewable biomass. There were other projects on the above, like a laboratory for the Federal Institute of Technology in Villingen. The synchrotron light source structure has a diameter of, I think, 130 meters. It's a big structure. Below is Saldom. Saldom is a huge storage building for 120,000 tons of salt. In Switzerland, we need salt to keep the roads black in the wintertime. So it has a diameter of 125 meters, or you could place Airbus 380. You could put into it. It has this size. On the left side, it's a project that we built for the Queen of England in Cornwall. It's Eden Project. And 2 or 3 more projects on the above right is Agro Expo that was built 3 years ago in Chengdu, all in wood. A big part has been delivered out of Switzerland and been erected. Every structure that you can see has a diameter of over 100 meters. So it's big. Indigo in Beijing, that's just on our engineering desk, and it will be built somewhere this or next year. And on the left side is a structure that we just delivered to US for an Indian investor, and he raises koi fishes in there. So it's a special project. But let me show what I consider important for the future. You see a picture. That picture is only 2 years old in Syria, in earthquake zones. In many earthquake zones, you have them in Asia, you had them in Chengdu, you had them in New Zealand, you can have it in Turkey. Concrete buildings are brittle. And if the concrete or the reinforcement is not professionally done, which happens often in those countries, then you have these damages and, of course, catastrophes. In the future that I see for society, it's a green tower system that we have developed. It can be built in short time. It's systemized, it's industrialized, and would be fully earthquake proof. That's what I wanted to show you at the end as an interesting project for society. Gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the timber age. The material is light, we are fast, and it is green as everybody wishes to change this world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christoph. It's a pity that I didn't get to know you any earlier because we're building 2 little houses and we initially wanted to build them with wood, but we couldn't find anyone who could do it the way we planned it. So now that I see what you can do, that would have been an easy thing for you because we're not doing a house with a span width of several hundred meters, as you can imagine. Thank you very much. Most interesting to see what can be done, and most interesting to know that whatever you then build, it can regrow. You know, whatever wood you use, it can be regrown the day after. So I think that's the way forward. Without losing much more time, I would hand over the floor, or would like to hand over the floor to our next speaker, which is Christoph Guzzi, who is actually standing in for Audrey Ma, who was initially tasked to present today, but Audrey missed her plane from Paris to Shanghai yesterday and is now in the air and cannot communicate to us from the airplane. So Christopher was so kind to jump in. He is the CTO, Chief Technical Officer of a company called Refire. That company is focusing on hydrogen solution, fuel cell systems, and so on and so forth. It's a Chinese company. Typically, these things, technologically high-standing things these days, they come out of China because simply the applications have to work fast and better when they come from China. And Europe may have invented the basics of it, but the applications currently seem to come out of China. Christoph Guzzi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. First of all, I've been working in this industry for 25 years, so I can, it's not a stretch for me to step in for Audrey. I think the important thing to keep in mind when you think about hydrogen and sustainability, and decarbonizing the world, is that hydrogen is an energy carrier, not an energy source. It has to come from somewhere, and if where the somewhere it doesn't come from is not green, then the hydrogen won't be green. So on a large scale, the integration of hydrogen with renewables is the key from a sustainability standpoint. Yes, there's geological hydrogen. Yes, hydrogen is a byproduct of some of the chemical industry. But at the very large scale, in terms of the energy transition and decarbonization, it's important to integrate hydrogen production with renewables. And that happens through electrolysis in general. That's been used for a very long time for various applications, from things like even bearing lubricants and steam power generation plants in hydrogenating food products. So hydrogen generation technology is well known. On the other side of things is hydrogen fuel cells. And that's where Refire's core is, and I'll get back to Refire in a second. But the other place that people don't necessarily think about hydrogen in terms of sustainability is in its use as a chemical to decarbonize cement production, ammonia production, direct reduction of iron in the steel industry. And those things are quite important in terms of overall sustainability. And again, that's not an area that Refire is in, but it is an area that's quite important. And how that all ties together is really from a policy perspective. There's 50 countries now that have a hydrogen roadmap, including things for hydrogen for chemical use and hydrogen for energy. And the reason is because it cuts across all the places you can think of that will be more green. On the transportation side of things, hydrogen's place is really in, I'll say, difficult to decarbonize applications like heavy duty transport as opposed to passenger cars. Passenger cars may come, but heavy duty transport is much more difficult to decarbonize because of the weight of batteries, etc., the use profile. Batteries in passenger cars do a great job and will for a very long time. And hydrogen's place in transportation will probably be more in heavy duty applications like over-the-road trucks, port operations, and things like that, trains. The thing about hydrogen in terms of how it fits in overall with renewables is that hydrogen storage can be used for very long duration, very large power needs. So if you're talking about seasonal storage or monthly storage of energy requirements, you should think about hydrogen. If you're thinking about utility scale, you should think about hydrogen. The costs are not in line yet, although they're coming down in terms of the technology to do that. But the other thing with hydrogen is once you've made it, you don't necessarily need to put through a fuel cell to make power, because hydrogen combustion turbines have been commercialized by at least 3 of the major turbine manufacturers. So hydrogen back to power through a normal turbine system is also possible. So let me come back to Refire. So what did Refire do and how does it fit? Refire started in 2015 as a company. However, Back when I used to be the CTO at Ballard Power in 2008, I worked with the guys that started Refire in Shanghai when they were at Shanghai Automotive, and the very first hydrogen vehicles in China. It's something that we're really one of the leading companies in China in terms of putting together automotive fuel cell systems and transportation fuel cell systems, and then as a derivative, stationary fuel cell systems. And the thing that was unique about Refire is that it started out, as opposed to Ballard, Refire started out from the automotive engineering back to the technology, and Refire and Ballard started at the technology forward to automotive. So that the Refire has always understood the application. Now, back to the point that was made about Europe versus China. At this point, Refire vehicles or vehicles incorporating Refire technology have over 230 million kilometers on the road, 7,000 vehicles. That's more vehicles than all the fuel cell vehicles in Europe ever, and more kilometers than all the fuel cell vehicles in Europe ever. And the reason is because the Chinese market is so huge, right? The bus market in China is 10 times as big as the European bus market. China uses 35 or 40% of the heavy duty trucks in the world. So the ability to do very large scale, let's call it pilot, trials is there. And we've used that experience over the past 9 years to build the technology, and it's why we can move so fast. The other thing is that our vision of how to do our job is not to control everything, because you have to build an ecosystem if you're going to be using hydrogen in transportation. You need to have clean hydrogen. It needs to be delivered. It needs to be stored. It needs to be produced at a reasonable price. And that's not just one company that does that. So in this industry at this point in time, you need to be thinking about pulling it all together. And that's going to be true for a very long time. If you've read anything about hydrogen lately, you've seen people cancel projects for production of hydrogen at large scale because they can't get someone to buy the hydrogen at large scale. So that's why one of the things that's key is to think about the uses of hydrogen that are not related to transportation and are not related to the energy production at the beginning, but are more related to the use of hydrogen for things like direct iron reduction, which from a sustainability standpoint is just, if not more important, or green ammonia, which is also a good way to transport hydrogen around the world. So anyway, our perspective is that all those things we don't do, we like to promote and like to participate in and invest in to some extent, because they're important to our future and where we contribute to the industry in terms of using hydrogen and fuel cells and electrolyzers. And that electrochemistry piece of it is our core competence. So it's complicated, and it's going a lot slower than one would hope, because we've been talking about hydrogen for 50 years. But now that there's more countries involved in it, and now that the focus is more on the applications that make economic sense, there is progress being made. And to a large extent in China, hydrogen is viewed as a key part of the energy future. So it will happen, and it will happen on a large scale. And the technology will probably be led, like battery technology was, in China. And the reason is because the ability to put it in the field and test it and learn is done at a very large scale. easily. And with that, I would be happy to answer questions later when we get to the panel discussions. And if you have any questions about refire or about hydrogen and how it fits with some of the other things, then please ask me then.
Get myself. Thank you. Thank you, Christopher. I had troubles on mute myself, but I'm back talking. This was very insightful, and I am sure you could give us hundreds of hours of additional talk about the technology that we all seem to think that we understand it, but we all have some problems to understand it. I have delved into it recently, so I'm sure there will be lots of questions coming to you later when we go into the panel. I would like to pass the floor on to Ning Ning. He is the manager of one of these many electric vehicle brands coming out of China. Another example where China has leapfrogged the automobile industries of the old days that were all relying on the combustion engine, simply because they seem to have decided they are not interested in the combustion engine anymore and instead focus on electric vehicles. If you go as a tourist to Beijing and you take a taxi, you will be amazed in what sort of vehicles you will be driven around in brands that you haven't heard of. XPeng is one of these brands. They have started to enter into Europe only a few years ago. I believe in 2023, they have entered the German market. Slowly, we will see them on the Swiss roads, but I don't believe there is a XPeng on the Swiss roads yet. So, Ning, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. It's my privilege to be in this discussion. It's actually first time ever. So I'd also like to thank Professor Zhang for this opportunity. So yeah, well, like you just described or mentioned, basically when it comes to the transformation from combustion engine to electrical vehicles, this is more of a viable or proven application on the passenger market. Which normally when we talk about electrical vehicle, people would consider or think of basically the use of electricity as a source of energy instead of fossil-based energy, which basically also means we introduce a lot more alternatives of the original source of energy, be it like solar, wind, tidal, nuclear. But on top of that, that's actually the part I want to share. There's more to it in terms of the additional sustainability people us from the EV automotive industry, EV makers that's bringing to the market. So first of all, there is this technology basically called vehicle to load or vehicle to grid, which basically means you can use your battery-based electrical vehicle as a battery. So you charge your car, your EV, during the off-peak hour in terms of energy usage. And then you either use energy directly from the car, connected to your home appliance, use energy directly from it, or even like when it comes to vehicle to grid, you can many of the EV makers are actually developing technologies that will allow you to basically provide electricity from your electrical vehicle to the power grid. So by doing this, we're basically flattening the curve of energy consumption. It also alleviates the burden of the grid of the state. And on top of that, we're also talking about technologies in intelligence or smart features, especially in the applications of ADAS, so basically assisted driving based on multiple sources of sensor or information. But the advantage or benefit of that is also we're allowing applications of, let's say, robotaxi or car sharing, which doesn't even need any people to basically drive the car or maintain the car. So this is actually the bigger wheel we have, or over the long run. So basically, we're eyeing on the possibilities of not having to own a car by everyone. So basically, the car is smart enough to drive itself, to basically travel around by itself. So instead of having to own a car, instead of everyone having to own a car, you only need to have a demand to use the car. So this is the more or future or more advanced mobility we have eye on. Of course, there are also the foundations in terms of greenest or sustainability. For example, because like automotive car makers, we are in the energy business. We know how much energy efficiency means. So the majority of the automakers in the entire world, I think it's safe to say, also are upgrading their manufacturing facility, either have the factories fully set up with solar panels and with more reusable energies. So the efficiency of the production facility is already much higher, and also which means basically the carbon fruit of the manufacturing of the car manufacturing is in general much lower than the majority of other heavy industry. Yeah. So basically, I'm from a sales. I have a sales function, so I'm trying to restrain myself from advocating too much of product or technology coming from my own company. I want to speak about EV in general, but this is basically the way we see that, and also we want to also emphasize the differences or additions of basically electrical vehicle as a product from the traditional automotive industry and the new generation EV makers. So in general, the new automakers will invest more on the intelligent related technologies. So I'm talking about, like I said, the intelligent features that improves the safety, improves the auto or assisted drivability, but also because there's so much information you can get from the car, it also helps the driver to basically have access to very accurate footprint, carbon footprint of the car, or even you can trace all the way down to the original source of your energy, of your electricity. And this in Europe, because carbon tracing is becoming a kind of a key topic, based on my understanding, to the big corporates and also to the government. Being able to provide a precise report or data about everyone's own carbon fruit actually helps the employees of those big corporate to basically not only report to the government, but also show their contribution to bringing down their total carbon emission or consumption. So as a summary, I'm trying to say, at least in the passenger vehicle market, the transition from a combustion engine to electrical vehicles is not like a overnight solution. It's not anywhere close to the final product or solution, but at least we think we are providing a platform that not only facilitating the use of alternative source of energy, but also this is kind of a platform to explore all kinds of different ways, methods, innovations to basically bring us to where we want to be. When we talk about sustainability, we talk about in my eyes, the essence of that would be basically less waste, less unnecessary use or loss of the source, and of course also like less pollution or like influence or damage to the nature by itself. So like relating greenest to sustainability, this is as far as we people from the automotive industry can see that we're trying to bring to the table. But like I said, there's a lot more that can be explored, and we're like many of the companies are still heavily investing in the development of technology to facilitate this. So that's basically my 2 cents.
Thank you, Ding, and great to hear from you. When I listen to all the presenters, then I get the feeling that all these companies and Bhutan together, we should form a joint venture and get green electric energy from the rivers, or the powers that the rivers could create from Bhutan. We should get the wood from the Bhutan heights and create big structures in Khelefu, and we should create the hydrogen that is needed to power all the trucks going up and down the roads in the country, and we would all fit into the same big garage that Christopher is building out of wood, besides building Khelefu Mindful City. I think none of you will ever have to face the typical approach, that reproach that one hears at times when you talk about climate change. But I would now like to open the floor and take the other panelists into the discussion. And I would like to start with Farhat Ali. Farhat Ali is an old friend from Pakistan. He has been representing many European companies in Pakistan. He was once head of Siemens in Pakistan, then head of ABB in Pakistan. I think he is currently still in Switzerland because I just met him a few days ago. And he's on the board of various companies. Some of them are still in Switzerland. Farhat, just to give you an important question. Pakistan is one of the countries that has an incredibly large population and that is developing fast, or has been developing fast in the last few years. You have had always chosen a path of, as a country, a path of quick development and economic growth. How do you see it? Do you see room in Pakistan for a growth path similar to Bhutan, or how does Pakistan transform itself into a, let's call it, climate friendlier country? Are there any visions, or are there any ideas?
Thank you, Urs, for a very liberal introduction, which I'm not sure I merit, but thank you for that. And I will start with my compliments to Singularity Academy and SwissCham Asia on holding this interesting webinar with focus on Asia. And also thank the distinguished speakers who informed me something which I did not know. I was happy to note that country Bhutan, they managed such a brilliant balance between their economic growth and being green, which is remarkable. Now, talking about Pakistan and the population, here I would like to put something on the table very frankly and openly, that you know that Asia hosts 60% of the population of the world, which is 4.6 billion. Southeast Asia, which is the fastest growing economy, out of this holds 2 billion. And India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh put together, which were formerly all India, host 2 billion of world's most vulnerable and poor population of the world, where floods and extreme heat due to climate change come and goes with disastrous result, but with no focus on from green to sustainability. And the reason for this is this: while technology development in renewable energy, auto industry, and similar will bring a dramatic change in green and sustainability in Europe and developing countries who have finances to fund it and a smaller population to manage it, this alone would not solve the problem of Asia, primarily on account of its financial resources and growing population, which outpace technology. Problem of Asia, especially Southeast Asia, to which my country belongs, is devastation on account of climate change, water management, deforestation, and land degradation. For Asia, we need, for the Asia and especially Southeast Asia and Arab region, which is Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh, we need a different solution. We need technology, of course, is helpful, but the sheer population growth outpaces this technology, and we need a different solution in resources, hydropower station, and deforestation, and other management. So I hope I have answered your question to some extent.
Thank you, Farhad. Yes, you have answered my questions to some extent. And of course, I assumed while posing the question that you do not have the silver bullet in your pocket and you can tell me this is how we do it and it'll be done tomorrow. These are big issues, big transitions that cannot be achieved overnight. And with this, I would like to go to our next panelist, Claude Jack. Claude has been living in Asia for the last 50 years or so. He is a multi-European soul. He can speak some Schweizerdeutsch because he's from the Alsatian area of France. He's always surprising me with his deep knowledge about Asia. He is rightfully a advisor on Asia to the French government, lives now in Thailand, and before has lived for 25 years in China. His understanding of Asia is deep, and he has joined our board of SwissCham Asia a few months ago, and we're very happy and proud to have him on this panel. Claude, similar question to you with regard to Thailand. You know, Thailand has a very strong growth engine, a bit a smaller population than Pakistan. Its industries may be more outward looking, more export oriented. How does Thailand fare in this discussion, and where does Thailand go? Does it have defensive arguments saying the rest of the world is trying to hold Thailand back with these measures of climate change that we're imposing on them, or are they starting to embrace these measures of change towards a more climate-friendly policy? Claude?
Thank you, Urs, for giving me the opportunity to speak. Actually, while I'm listening to you all, you are all apostles of sustainability. You know, none of you needs convincing of the necessity, and that sustainability is the challenge of our era. However, and Thailand is no different from neighboring countries and would not behave in a different way. So I intended to approach the issue by looking at it a little bit differently, because all of you are involved in sustainability, and you are basically almost stakeholders. And I, after a long career in operations and in corporations, and Urs hinted to it at the beginning, ESG is sometimes just a nice to have page on an annual report, a must have in order to exist because it is politically correct, like going to church without believing somehow. So I would like to approach the sustainability issue still from the point of view of the billions who are not that involved and who don't feel concerned. Now, what was quite nice in this panel, we had corporations which spoke, we had states, governments which spoke, and I would like also to speak as an individual, because there is a resistance to change existing still, like there has been a resistance to this and that. But like, I mean, we managed to stop smoking in restaurants, to stop smoking in airplanes, to stop drinking less, to eat less, and we even managed to stop taking the airplanes during COVID. So somebody told me the other day, so I mean, it is possible to have a sustainable behavior in the future, even starting today. For me, it is not just an environmental concept, but it is a holistic paradigm for survival and regeneration. At its core, what does it mean, sustainability? Because we all know what it means, but sometimes we probably also talk to our audience and people who will be listening to this podcast later. It is at its core, it means meeting today's present needs without compromising the ability of future generation to meet their own needs. This is for me the sustainability definition, and it's sometimes good to remember this. Now, for individuals, I have been meeting either in boardrooms or in strategic councils. I think it still demands a profound psychological and behavioral transformation, because it requires abandoning the comfort of our consumption-driven lifestyles as individuals and embracing a more conscious, interconnected existence. For corporations, the corporations that spoke are basically also stakeholders, but for a lot of corporations, they need to check to see whether their carbon footprint or their ecological behavior is acceptable in today's world. But it represents also an existential challenge because it addresses competitive advantages. I think as long as the companies are algorithms where profitability is the key element and the only element very often, I think we do have a problem here. And to integrate ecological and social considerations into the strategic thinking is something that comes very often, is seen at a cost. I have listened to Bhutan's story with great interest, because states do have an enormous responsibility. Politicians do have an enormous responsibility. Unfortunately, there is a lot of short-termism in our democratic systems, where you have a 4 or 5 years electoral cycles, and I think that a lot of the people I know in politics struggle to implement strategies that require decades-long commitments. So there is a lot of resistance to change and to adopt sustainable behaviors, which I have noted, and which I think is a big issue that still has to be addressed. There are changes. My children are very conscious and committed, and they look at me sometimes as if from Jurassic Park. So I do think that there is a wave of a new generation coming, but the present day management in corporations still is an issue. So Thailand is no different, because there are millions of people saying, how does this concern me? I have other problems to deal with rather than sustainability. So I think this is what I wanted to say. It's the challenge of our era. A lot has to be done continue to be done in terms of education at all levels, individual, political, and in corporations. I think that my son even told me, oh, we should empower a global agency to create and empower a global agency to educate, sanction, and reward. And on this note, this will have been my contribution, Urs.
Thank you, Claude. And thank you for bringing it down to the level of the individual. And here, of course, the individual notices when the flood is coming down, like Farhad was saying in Pakistan. And as soon as the flood is gone, the individual tends to forget. That's why we have the leaders. And the leaders should not forget, they should plan ahead. But which brings me to our last panelist, Professor Dr. Ying Chang. You saw her organizing everything in the background. And in order to wrap it up, Ying, just imagine you are the leader, the whole omnipotent leader of the world. What would be the 5 immediate steps that you would undertake to bring the world into a more sustainable future? I know this is, I talk a little bit on because I know this is unprecedented and I didn't give you any clue. So whilst I keep on talking, you have a little bit time to think, and as soon as I stop, you will have to deliver your 5 steps. Ying, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you for your question. This is 5 steps. I don't think we can achieve it in 5 steps. That's the answer. And then if in detailed answer, if I am the only one leader there, 5 steps, then I could say that it's impossible to achieve with 5 steps, because it's impossible to achieve sustainability individually. It does need a lot of collective effort. That's why in this webinar, we try to bring country, we try to bring corporate and scholars from various areas together. For me, one of the things I learned from the academic and scholar part is that sustainability still has no concept of measurement at whatever level. That's why when Bhutan started to propose this gross national happiness, and then all of a sudden the UN think, oh, that's a great idea, we should follow it. But the problem is Bhutan's happiness measure is completely different from what we usually measure in our academic research. In Bhutan, their happiness is being permanently, consistently content. But in our measurement, in happiness, in what level of the research is joy, is momentary joy, is emotional. So you can tell that from this level, there are already big difference. And not to mention that when we talk about sustainability, the difference, big contrast of understanding sustainability. And sustainability, what we often see is, oh, being green, you have to bring green. That's what we try to put on as a title of this this webinar. But actually, this is a trap. I don't know how many people realize it, from green to sustainability. And there is several steps. There are 3 steps going to sustainability. Is from the green to the red to the yellow to the white. It's like a spring, summer, autumn, winter, and back to spring again. So sustainability is if incorporating the concept of being content and being happiness from Bhutan's happiness index, sustainability is trying to make a human and humanity being survival, constantly survival, and in the end being constantly content. And that is what sustainability should acknowledge, that you have to acknowledge you have a spring, you have a green part. You also need to have the red part, and you have a yellow part, you have a white part, same as you have to acknowledge your different emotions as a human beings. And now at whatever level, it's the same, Claude already mentioned that it's a holistic. At whatever level right now is this cycle of acknowledgement of humanity, and companies act not being acknowledged, not being legitimated. That's why different country has different plan, and different canton province within the state have a different plan. And basically we're not on the same stage. And it's, of course, it's also difficult to talk about how to achieve sustainability. You know, if people really understand the concept of sustainability, it shouldn't even have a steel industry. It just have a wood and timber industry, because that's a simple, light, green, fast, and it can solve all the problem. But steel industry incorporates technology, incorporates a lot of GDP, incorporates a lot of what I say is the power side of humanity. Sometimes it play as a dark side of the humanity. So if I want to answer the questions that Urs asked me, 5 steps, I would say that we have to go back to square number 1, try to authentically understand what is the true mindfulness of humanity there, what is the true sustainability here. In that sense, I really believe that Bhutan can offer a lot of values, not about, you know, this mindfulness city or growth happiness index. Bhutan can offer a lot of philosophical idea to sustainability that maybe Ambassador Wangchuk in the future should bring to Europe, and let this leading players of the companies try to understand better. And maybe we should organize another webinar just to bring all the ambassadors together, or all the stake heads together, and really discuss what is sustainability. How can we really avoid the greenwash and to the sustainability? How can we acknowledge these different 4 seasons and 5 colors together to do the sustainability? And in the end, we can be truly being content as a human, and to acknowledge both sides of humanity. That's my a little bit summary from my side. I hope everyone happy about my statement.
Thank you, Ying. I know this was too much of a question, but from your answer, I gather it, Bhutan would be something like the energy core, spiritual energy core for the rest of the world to rethink and try to refocus on what is really important. Now, I want to open the floor further. Christoph, Häring, just a simple question. Did you choose to go into the wood industry because of its sustainability, or did it just happen and you like to just swim on the sustainability train now? That's the anti-greenwashing question.
Oh, honestly, it was a completely other reason. Actually, I was afraid to be a member of the fourth generation, so I emigrated to Brazil and worked there in Rio de Janeiro as an engineer for dams and large country projects. But my family was stronger and they called me back. So I had to go back rather from a moral reason to continue what they started. And at this time, nobody really talked about sustainability. What I saw really, what the ancestor made at this time out of wood, where nobody really talked about sustainable. But it came to my mind that actually it is intelligent. It is intelligent to work with a material or a biomass that is renewable. And then I discovered what I told before about those the comparison of the mass intensity per service unit. That means that the fiber, the wood fiber, in relation to its weight is completely comparable to steel. It was so much amazing for me as an engineer. I said, I should have heard this at the Federal Institute, but they didn't talk that time about this. And said, well, but this is the potential of this material, and it takes nothing but sun and water. What an amazing thing it is. And well, that was in the early 80s. Nobody was really talking about sustainable. We had one problem in Switzerland at that time. We had, they call it forest dying, and some forests had problems. And everybody said, the forests are dying because of the cars. And of course, we were talking to foresters, and they tell us what is the reason why those forests are dying. You know what they said? They said the forest is a plant. It has an age. They are too old. Nobody is harvesting them. You have to harvest a tree. A farmer has to harvest the field when the wheat is ripe to be harvested. But in the forester said, the wood price is too low. We leave the trees in the forest. Nobody was forced to harvest, but any tree has also its own life. And honestly, Mr. Ambassador, this is also a case in Bhutan. I saw many cases of forests where the trees were dead. Because, and I know in Bhutan, with all respect, a plant is considered there as a, how shall I say, it's a living material. And there is the Buddhist belief that you have to respect this. And that was certainly in many cases a reason why forests were just left there as they are. But a tree has its own age. And there came a story, and we found out actually it's nothing but intelligent. And that's what I showed where we are today.
Thank you, Christoph. Before I go to Ambassador Wangchuk, maybe a question to Chris Ghazi. You know, wood, to a certain extent, when I listen to Christopher, it's also just a ways of storing energy. You know, in his case, he's talking about sun and water. Hydrogen, in many ways, is just also an energy storage. And if I look at it, sun and water is abundantly around, but then once you store that energy, in the form of hydrogen, you might also need to bring it to the place where this hydrogen is being used. How do you deal with these challenges? And you know, are there pipelines, or how is hydrogen being transported around, for example, from Bhutan to New York City, where it could be used?
Well, there's a number of ways. Pipeline, of course, is if it's land-based in a reasonable distance away, it would be preferred over trucks, just because you can move more where you want it if you have a need that far away. So that's the optimal way for certain situations. On the other hand, there's also the possibility to transport it as another chemical. And I was talking before about ammonia. You don't have to ammonia cracking to produce hydrogen, and nitrogen is well known. It's been around for a very long time. So it's possible to turn hydrogen into ammonia, transport ammonia, and then turn it back into hydrogen later. That's a likely route for maritime shipment. Compressed hydrogen, there's hydrogen transport ships being built. It's not clear that that's the most cost optimal. It's also technologically possible. From the perspective of, say, local use, transportation in the form of liquid organic hydrogen carriers is possible. So that's just an organic molecule that that chemically reacts to form a bond with the hydrogen, so you can get more dense carrying of the hydrogen, and then it's released again. So there's a number of ways to do it. It depends on what scale you'd like to use, but in the end, you needed to come back to hydrogen if you're going to use one of the hydrogen technologies. But again, from a sustainability standpoint, you may not want it to come back to hydrogen. You might want to use the chemical that you made to transport it. Ammonia can be made into fertilizer directly.
Okay, so yeah, ammonia could be the answer to the transport question of hydrogen, I guess, and it is a small process to then retransfer it into hydrogen from
right, or methanol, same thing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Chris. Maybe a quick question to Ning. In the eyes of the rest of the world, it's amazing how China transformed its personal transportation fleet into this large proportion of electric vehicles. How was this achieved? Was this let's call it a honorable leadership decision, or was this an accident, or was this foresight, or how did you get there so fast?
Well, I mean, first I have to agree with you. I think this largely has to be based on the vision and decision from the Chinese government. I mean, it's like, I think starting since like 40 years ago, the Chinese government started with this 5-year strategic planning. So basically, the government would normally have a very clear timeline on basically what they plan to achieve over a 5-year period. So basically, electrification of the automotive vehicles was part of the big plan from a few years ago, and this was partly motivated by the accusation of polluting the world. I think it's safe. I mean, I can only speak for myself, right? But also, the Chinese government did see an opportunity to not only improve the productivity or the advance of technology, but also to play a bigger role in the in the world automotive industry. So basically, even the introduction of Tesla as what we call a catfish in the Chinese automotive industry, but also the incentives, encouragement, supports on the start of local business. So those all played a very big role. But on the other hand, I do have to say, as a Chinese, I think we cannot take all the credit of this. Like I said, Tesla was the pioneer. They basically inspired the entire appearance of electrical vehicle industry. But also many of the Chinese car makers, especially EV makers, that appears successful, stable at the moment, are also like supported or inspired, or like many of the products or technology are based on collaboration with established brands from the Western world, like Europe. The company I worked for, there were a lot of collaboration with German car makers on the design, the technology, and everything. And although now it starts to turn around, so we're all like, my company is also providing technology platform to one of the most known German car maker. But I'm just trying to say, it was largely funded by, or like started by, the Chinese government, but it wasn't just that. It takes, you know, effort, support, help from all angles. And I think it's also the same thing for the Western part, because I live in Europe. I know eventually, if we want to make big steps on like getting green, getting sustainable, more sustainable, it always has to be initiated by the government, because they have the most power, they have the most influence. Everything they decide and they do will be the most effective. That's
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Maybe the last question to Ambassador Wangchuk. Did Bhutan have the ear of the leadership of China? Were you whispering into the ear of China, telling them they have to live more sustainably and create an electric vehicle economy? Or what would you do, or what can we do that the Bhutanese idea can be spread to the rest of the world, in case you don't have their ear? How can we make Bhutan become something like a spiritual battery for good ideas, preserving the nature of the planet?
That's a very interesting set of questions, Doris. Firstly, I would like to clarify here that when we talk about sustainability in the context of our development philosophy of gross national happiness, it was never the intention of my country to preach this to the outside world, until, you know, there were a lot of interest in what we were doing back home in Bhutan, that we eventually started going beyond our borders to talk about what we are doing, and not really actually telling people what they should do. So really, I don't think, you know, what China has been doing in terms of, you know, green technology is amazing. In fact, there are a lot of electric cars from China coming to Bhutan now. I think BYD has come in a big way. I think what China is doing, perhaps, you know, even other bigger economies should look at how we can use technology to address the issue of climate change and sustainability. Bhutan is a very small country, you know, geographically, demographically, also in terms of economy, we are very small. What we do in Bhutan can have very, very little impact to the rest of the world. But at least if we serve as a model of sustainability, I think that would be our biggest contribution to the world. And like I said in my intervention, you know, on the subject of sustainability and climate change and global warming, there's this issue of free rider. You know, just because, you know, I do something to preserve our Mother Earth, there's no guarantee that other countries will follow suit. And this is exactly the issue that we're facing in a global discourse in climate change. For example, we are all aware, we are facing existential threat. Not immediately, but another 2-3 generations down the line, this is going to be a serious problem. But despite knowing that, this issue of free rider, global climate discourse, not many countries are willing to do enough to save our world. So our only hope is that we continue to serve as a model, and while looking at how we do things in Bhutan, I think the more advanced economists, economists around the world take advantage of technology and try to make our world a bigger and better place to live. Otherwise, we are all aware of the existential threat we are facing, the climate-related disaster. Even as we speak, Bhutan is already suffering, severe effects of climate change in terms of flooding, unseasonal rain, changing weather pattern, and also diseases. We see mosquitoes at about 3,000 meters in Bhutan, which was never heard of before. 20 years ago, we never saw mosquitoes in the capital city. Now we see mosquitoes. The whole lot of changes taking place around us. And while these changes are subtle, we don't tend to realize it, because it happens over a period of time. So, going back to your question, we really do not intend to teach anyone, how to run the economy. But yeah, insofar as we are concerned, we are committed to pursuing this development philosophy, gross national happiness, the central tenet of which is sustainability. So I'm glad that I had this opportunity to share this space with you and talk about what we are doing in Bhutan. And definitely we don't want to lecture the world on sustainability. Thank you, Rus.
Thank you, Ambassador Wangchuk. And, one of the beauties of being a small country, people are not afraid to listen to a small country because they don't feel they're being patronized. And so I think your voice is maybe stronger than what you believe it is. And your good example, I think, is leading the world. I would like to thank you all participants on today's panel, the speakers. It was wonderful to work with you. I had a lot of pleasure guiding you through it, and I hope I did not overwhelm any of you with too silly of a question. Dr. Chung, please forgive me for that question that I posed to you. I hope we will see each other in the not so distant future and can continue to work on making this planet a better world for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.
Thank you. Have a good day. And today's Thanksgiving. Thank you very much.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving.